I want to talk about the quiet power of quitting. Not the kind that's dramatic or headline worthy, but the kind that feels like choosing peace over pretending, the kind that slowly, steadily makes room for a life that feels more like yours. In my 50s, I didn't have a full-blown midlife crisis, but I did start noticing that some of the things I was holding on to weren't holding me back, they were dragging me under. We live in a world that glorifies perseverance, hustle, and pushing through no matter the cost. From a young age, we're taught to finish what we start, to never give up, to keep proving our worth by how much we can endure. But here's the truth no one talks about. Not everything is meant to be held on to, and not everything is worth finishing. Quitting, when done with intention and self-respect, is not a sign of weakness. It's a deeply courageous act of self-awareness. It takes strength to say, this no longer serves me. It takes clarity to walk away from a role, a relationship, a belief, or even a version of yourself that no longer aligns with who you're becoming. In my 50s, I began to understand that continuing something just because I started it was not loyalty, it was fear. Fear of judgment, fear of change, fear of letting people down. But the deeper fear, the one I was avoiding, was the fear of disappointing myself by staying stuck in places I had outgrown. There is no prize for enduring what hurts your spirit, no trophy for carrying things that dim your light. When you quit with courage, you're not giving up on life, you're giving up on living small. And the freedom that comes after, the exhale, the peace, the space to finally be yourself, that's where happiness begins to bloom. Because life isn't just about holding on, it's about learning when to let go. For years, I believed that being strong meant keeping it all together. I believed that holding back my tears, hiding my disappointment, and burying my pain was a form of maturity, something to be proud of. I'd say, I'm fine when I wasn't. I'd smile through sadness. I'd minimize what hurt and package it in politeness. But something started to break in my 50s, not in a dramatic falling apart kind of way, but in small, quiet moments. Moments where I realized I was becoming emotionally invisible in my own life. I was present, yes, but not authentic. I was showing up, but not as my full self. What I've learned is this: emotional honesty isn't weakness, it's the doorway to real connection. When we pretend to be okay, we don't just disconnect from others. We abandon ourselves. We trade intimacy for safety, truth for performance. And here's what happens when you finally stop doing that. People lean in. The ones who truly care, who want to love you as you are, not as you pretend to be, they show up. Not everyone will, and that's okay. But the ones who stay, they see you fully, deeply, and in that sacred scene, you finally feel known. Telling the truth about how you feel doesn't make you a burden, it makes you brave. It gives others permission to be honest too. It creates spaces where masks fall off and real healing begins. In my 60s, I no longer waste energy managing appearances. If I'm grieving, I say it. If I'm joyful, I don't downplay it. If I need support, I reach out without shame. And let me tell you, the connections I've built from that place, raw, unfiltered, real, have brought more peace and purpose than decades of polished perfection ever could. Because we don't bond over how well we pretend. We bond over the truth that says, me too, I felt that too. For most of my life, I believed that being kind meant being available, that love meant sacrifice, that saying yes kept me connected and saying no might make me lose people. So I became what many of us are taught to become: accommodating, agreeable, and endlessly forgiving. I allowed conversations that drained me. I tolerated disrespect under the banner of keeping the peace. I silenced my discomfort to protect someone else's ego, and every time I did that, a small piece of my self-respect eroded quietly. But in my 50s, I began to question something fundamental. Why did I believe that everyone else's comfort mattered more than my own clarity? Why did I think kindness meant never disappointing anyone, even at the cost of betraying myself? That's when I learned boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are bridges that show people how to love you properly. They are not punishments, they are instructions. They are a sacred form of self-trust where you decide what your energy is worth and who's earned the right to access it. It took time. At first, saying no felt like abandonment. I felt guilty for protecting my peace. I worried I was being selfish. But I came to understand that self-respect and self-neglect cannot coexist. If I wanted to live with integrity, I had to start treating myself like someone who mattered. So now, in my 60s, my boundaries are clear, loving, and firm. I no longer explain myself in paragraphs. I no longer stay in conversations where I'm being diminished. I no longer feel obligated to fix everyone's discomfort when I set a limit. Because here's the truth: the people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will call them selfish, but the people who love you well will honor them without needing to be convinced. When you set boundaries, you're not pushing others away, you're inviting in a deeper, more honest kind of love. And most importantly, you're choosing to belong to yourself first, which is the foundation of every healthy relationship you'll ever build. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that aging is a slow unraveling, a quiet disappearance from relevance, from beauty, from possibility. We're told to fight it, hide it, cover it up. We're sold serums, surgeries, and slogans that whisper, "You are running out of time." But what if that's a lie? What if aging isn't about loss? It's about unfolding, not fading, but becoming more honest, more grounded, more whole. In my 50s, I started to feel the first tremors of grief around aging. My body was changing, my energy shifted. Things that used to come easy took more effort, and the world seemed to value me a little less. And for a while, I bought into the fear that my worth was tied to my youth, that my voice had an expiration date, that my best chapters were behind me. But something incredible happened as I leaned into the discomfort instead of fighting it. I discovered that aging strips away everything that isn't real. The performances, the people-pleasing, the pressure to be perfect. It peels you down to your truest self. And what's underneath is something stronger, softer, and more sacred. Now, in my 60s, I don't chase youth. I honor it for what it taught me. But I no longer try to go back, because what I've gained is so much more valuable than what I've lost. I've gained wisdom that can't be read in books. I've gained peace from knowing I don't need to be everything to everyone. I've gained the courage to speak truth even if my voice shakes. Aging has given me permission to slow down, not because I've stopped caring, but because I've finally started choosing what I care about. And the beauty? It's not in wrinkle-free skin or perfect posture. It's in the sparkle of a woman who knows who she is, in laugh lines earned from decades of resilience. It's in the posture of someone who no longer needs validation to feel valuable. Aging is not something to survive, it's something to celebrate. Because you're not running out of time, you're stepping more fully into your truth. And that is not decline, that is ascension. For most of my life, I treated joy like a reward, something I had to earn. Something that came after the to-do list was done, the kids were okay, the house was clean, my body looked right, my emotions were regulated, my past was healed, and my future was under control. In other words, never. I believed joy belonged to those who had their lives fully together. I thought I had to deserve it. And so I spent years waiting, postponing laughter until I was more disciplined, holding off on rest until I was more productive, cleaning my happiness so I wouldn't look too full of myself. But as I moved through my 50s, I began to see how quietly joy was slipping through my fingers. Not because I lacked it, but because I was too distracted to notice it. I was always striving, always measuring, always waiting for a perfect moment that never came. And then I learned something that changed everything. Joy isn't earned, it's noticed. It's not about perfection, it's about presence. It's about choosing to feel delight even when life is messy, uncertain, or incomplete. Joy is a hot cup of coffee in a quiet morning. It's the sound of your own laughter catching you off guard. It's dancing in your kitchen to music only you can hear. It's the courage to love what you love, even if no one else understands it. Joy doesn't ask you to fix your past or control your future. It invites you into this moment, just as it is. Imperfect, unpolished, alive. In my 60s, I've stopped waiting for someday. I take long walks and call them sacred. I let myself cry during movies. I smile at strangers and mean it. I celebrate without needing a reason. Because the truth is, joy is not a finish line you arrive at. It's a choice you make with your whole heart, even when your life is still unfolding. You don't need to be healed to feel joy. You don't need to be successful to feel joy. You don't need permission. You just need to be here fully, softly, willingly. And that kind of joy, the kind that rises from ordinary presence, is not just beautiful, it's transformative. If there's one thing I wish I had learned earlier in life, it's this. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need to trust yourself. But for decades, I didn't. I second-guessed my gut. I over-explained my choices. I twisted myself into versions that were easier to accept, more agreeable, more accommodating, more normal. Every time I made a decision, I'd ask, what will they think? Every time I had a boundary, I'd soften it just enough not to ruffle feathers. And every time I had a deep knowing, I'd wait for someone else to confirm it, someone with more confidence, more authority, more permission. But here's what I've come to understand. Outsourcing your wisdom is a slow kind of self-abandonment. You are the only one who has lived every second of your life. The only one who knows what makes your body tighten and what makes your spirit exhale. You're the only one who wakes up in your skin every day and carries your joy, your grief, your resilience. And yet we've been conditioned, especially as women, to trust others before ourselves, to defer to experts, to follow the rules, to stay small, stay polite, stay quiet. But the cost of that conditioning is steep. It steals our clarity. It mutes our voice. It keeps us living half-lives, waiting for someone to say, yes, you're allowed. In my 50s, I began to rebel against that, not with shouting, but with soft, steady self-trust. With saying, I don't need you to understand. I just need to honor what's true for me. With choosing what felt right in my bones, even if it didn't make sense to anyone else. And in my 60s, I live by this truth. No one else is coming to rescue you from your own doubt. The most powerful thing you can do is stand beside yourself fully, fiercely, unwaveringly. Self-trust isn't loud. It's quiet certainty. It's knowing that your no is enough, that your yes is sacred, that your intuition is not a fluke. It's wisdom, it's history, it's a compass. And here's the magic. When you trust yourself, you stop begging for validation. You stop shrinking to be digestible. You stop explaining your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. You begin to walk differently, not arrogantly, but with the grounded grace of someone who belongs to herself. And that is the most radical kind of freedom there is. When we think of happiness in later life, we often imagine it coming from adding more knowledge, more achievements, more routines, more control. In fact, the deeper I've gone into my 60s, the more I've learned that real happiness doesn't come from adding. It comes from releasing what no longer fits. releasing who you had to be to survive, releasing the need to be understood by everyone, releasing the shame, the guilt, the pressure to prove. The 10 things I quit weren't grand gestures. They didn't make headlines or shake the world, but they changed my life. Because each time I quit something that wasn't aligned with my truth, I made room for something more powerful: peace, self-respect, and joy that doesn't ask for permission. And let's be honest, quitting is not always easy. It takes courage to walk away from rules we've outgrown, stories we've internalized, or expectations we never agreed to in the first place. But every single time I chose myself, quietly, intentionally, unapologetically, my life became more honest, more meaningful, for mine. So, to you're somewhere in your 50-ish feeling the quiet pull to let go of things that don't sit right anymore, listen to it. Not because you're giving up, but because you're waking up. And in that awakening, in that beautiful act of quitting what dims your light, you'll find something sacred. Well, the kind of happiness that isn't loud or flashy, but soft, steady, and deeply free. You don't need to become someone else to be happy in your 60s. You just need to stop being what you're not. And that kind of joy, it's waiting for you on the other side of letting go.